Hey, folks, I'm Elijah Ford, attorney at law and managing partner at Atlas Law, and I'm bringing you All You Gotta Do Is, your resource for navigating life's little legal mysteries. Stay tuned and let's make the system make sense. Welcome back to another episode of All You Gotta Do Is. If you live in the United States, you know that this is a country based on laws and property. And for that reason, law and lawyers are everywhere. And lawyers can be helpful for many different kinds of matters: family issues, business, criminal, accidents, housing, education, you name it. But choosing the wrong lawyer can often do more harm than good. So, how do you know when you need an attorney, and how do you choose the right attorney to represent you? So, today on All You Gotta Do Is, that's what we're going to talk about. We are going to talk about how to choose an attorney and when do you know if you even need an attorney. So let's talk about first, how does one become an attorney in this country? So it depends. There are a couple different ways. Most of us will go to, we'll get an undergraduate degree, and then we'll go to 3 years of law school. And at the conclusion of those 3 years, we sit for an exam called the bar exam. And the bar exam and what you need exactly to enter into practice of the law will vary slightly from state to state, but most states will require you to graduate from an accredited law school and then pass this bar exam, which usually includes an ethics portion, and then they test you on different areas of the law just to make sure that you have some basic knowledge. However, there are a few states, and Washington being one of them, where you can actually apprentice. So you can, after you're done with undergraduate, you can work for a lawyer as an apprentice, and then this lawyer is sort of responsible for your legal education. And then at the conclusion of your apprenticeship, you can sit for the bar exam, and then if you pass the bar exam, and then of course pay all the fees, then you get to be an attorney just like if you had gone to law school. It's a rare situation. The only attorney that I know that's ever done that, it was his daughter that was his apprentice. And then when she got her, passed the bar exam, then she went to work for him in his law firm. It's a rare situation, but it does happen. So most of us, though, do the 3 year route and then have a large debt to pay off. Some of us even take out loans for the bar exam period because the study is so intense that they discourage you from working while you're studying for the exam. So that's generally the process that most attorneys in this country, and certainly most attorneys here in the state of Washington, would have gone through to get to where they are. And once the person has taken the bar exam, then they can really do any kind of law that they want. It's different than medicine and some other practice areas where you will get out of school and then you do a residency, and then not only are you a doctor, but you are a neurologist. You focus on the brain, or you're a gynecologist and you focus on reproductive issues. Here with attorneys, once you graduate and pass the bar, you can do any type of law that you set your mind to and you feel like you are qualified to practice. Uh, but oftentimes, what happens is people will gravitate towards a certain type of practice and then spend their career doing mostly that. So you have attorneys that will do criminal law and you find that that's all they do. They don't take any civil cases. They're not doing tax matters. They're just doing criminal. Or an attorney like myself who, I'm an ambulance chaser. I just deal with people who are injured for the most part. I mean, I do some other things. I do some mediations. I do some pro bono immigration work, but for the most part, I deal with people who have some type of injury, either because of an accident or because of some long-term illness, and they're not able to work or they have some other type of barrier to functioning. So there are very few attorneys who are generalists. Not to say that there aren't. There are, and you'll find them often in smaller towns or smaller cities because there aren't enough attorneys in that particular location so that they can specialize. So, you're in a small town and you might be one of only two attorneys. Yeah, you're going to be handling the criminal matters. You're going to be handling grandma's wills. You're going to be handling traffic accidents. You're going to be probably dealing with everything. But for most of us, we specialize. So let's talk a little bit now about some what I'd like to call barriers to justice. Another way to put that would be, what are some of the obstacles that people face when they are, trying to find an attorney? Well, some of the barriers to justice include cost, complexity of the legal system, the physical requirement to get to court, past bad experiences with the legal system or systems in general, and perhaps immigration status might also be one of them. So in terms of cost, the cost of an average attorney is about $300 an hour. And so depending on the complexity of a particular legal matter, you can see how that could get to be very costly very quickly. And for criminal matters, that is maybe more problematic than most because, when it comes to like, okay, well, I have a traffic ticket, I'd like to fight it. That's one thing. And it's another thing when it's, hey, I'm being charged with a crime and my freedom's at stake. How am I going to afford the $300 an hour for someone to help me navigate this issue? A study by the ABA, that's the American Bar Association, and they're the same folks, by the way, who, when I mentioned accredited law schools earlier, the ABA, the American Bar Association, is that body that accredits those institutions. So a study by the ABA found that 80% of low-income individuals cannot afford legal assistance. And then with middle-income people, 40 to 60% of their legal needs go unmet also because of costs. So that's a high percentage. I think most of us will fall into that low or middle income categories. And again, 80% for low income folks cannot afford legal assistance, and 40 to 60% of middle income people can't either. So what do we do? What do we do here? Those numbers are bleak. Well, if you're in one of those categories and you're having a hard time, affording an attorney, you might just go without having your legal needs taken care of. Or if you meet the threshold only for criminal matters, then you might be eligible for a court-appointed lawyer. And the thing to remember there is that's only for criminal matters. Criminal matters make up a small percentage of the overall legal system. Most of us are going to be engaging in the legal system for issues like injuries or Social Security or divorce or property disputes. And all of those things they don't come with any constitutional guarantee to representation. So if you cannot afford an attorney for any of those types of matters, the state's not going to help you. So let's back up a little bit, and we're going to talk a little bit later about resources for if you cannot afford an attorney. But first, let's talk about how do you know if you need an attorney? That there are a couple instances where you should definitely either strongly think about it or just go and get one. And that is when your liberty is at stake. Then you absolutely need an attorney. And hopefully you are not in a position where you have to rely on a court-appointed attorney. No shots at my court-appointed attorneys out there or any of the folks at the public defender's office. I started out my career in the public defender's office in D.C. Hardworking folks, but they are overworked and underpaid, and they might not be looking at your file until they're in the courtroom looking at you for the first time. So anyhow, but you definitely need an attorney if your liberty is at stake. And we will, in later episodes, we'll talk more about criminal proceedings and how to navigate those if you or a loved one find yourself in that situation. The second situation where I would say you should definitely get an attorney is when there's any type of fundamental right being threatened. Your housing, for instance, get an attorney. If something is interfering with your ability or your child's ability to be properly educated or receive the proper instruction that they are supposed to receive, I would suggest getting some representation. If your license, your ability to drive, or your professional license that allows you to work is at stake, I would advise you to seek counsel, because those things are so important and these systems are so nuanced that your likelihood as a lay person of successfully navigating them alone is very slim. And if the likelihood of success is slim and the cost of you losing is high, I feel like that's the sweet spot where you need someone to help guide and advise you. Another situation where I see people get shafted shafted, that is, again, not a professional term or a term of art, but I've definitely seen people be in a tough spot if they are not a native English speaker and they are trying to navigate the system or any system alone. They're going to have a tough time. So if you or someone you know is not a native English speaker and they are finding themselves trying to navigate a system, encourage them, or I encourage you to find an attorney. There are a lot of bilingual attorneys out there. And even if an attorney is not bilingual, there are translation services that make that type of representation possible. Another instance when I would suggest getting an attorney is when another party in the dispute is represented. So if you are in an employment dispute and your employer is represented and you are not, you're already at a disadvantage because the employer is the one usually with the deeper pockets. You don't necessarily want to stack those disadvantages by then trying to navigate, a complex employment situation alone. The other one I can think of is if you have had a traumatic brain injury or a cognitive impairment, then definitely you need some help. This is any system, criminal, civil, Social Security, tax, what have you, is often difficult enough without an injury and without any impairments. And then if you stack, any type of cognitive impairment or brain injury on top of that, it's definitely a losing proposition for you. So those are, and I guess the last one actually would be if you feel like you need one. Honestly, sometimes you might be a native English speaker. You might, your liberty might not be at stake. You might not have a cognitive impairment. None of these things might be true, but you might just feel like you are in over your head. And if that is how you feel, go with your gut and see if you can find someone to help you. So those are the 6 sort of red flags, if you will, to indicate when you might need an attorney. So now let's talk about some things to consider when choosing an attorney. The first I would say is the money, right? How much is that person going to charge and can you afford it? So now let's talk a little bit here about how attorneys get paid. Attorneys get paid in 2 different ways. One is on a contingency fee basis. And attorneys like myself who deal with people who have been injured will typically get paid on a contingency fee basis. And what a contingency fee is that attorney will get paid a portion of whatever benefits, monetary benefits, you receive. So another way to think about this is if you don't get paid, they don't get paid. So let's say you have been injured at work and you are receiving time loss compensation and you have an attorney. That attorney would be getting paid about 10% of whatever your time loss is. And that is their payment for representing you. So you aren't writing them a check for that 10%. They are taking that 10% out of whatever it is you're paying, whatever it is you are getting paid. So that 10% could be $10. It could be $1,000. It could be, it's tied to whatever amount of the benefit you are getting. Now, on the other side of things are attorneys who get paid on an hourly basis. And attorneys who get paid on an hourly basis are usually, your criminal attorneys, your tax attorneys. If you if the attorney is representing a business, let's say. So that's, when I said that $300 an hour, that's where that number comes from. Those attorneys, at least, that's like the average. You're going to find attorneys who will charge less than that. Those are usually the attorneys that have been in practice for less time. And you're going to find attorneys who charge more than that $300 an hour. And those attorneys will typically be attorneys who have been in practice longer, or they have such a niche specialty, or they're in such a niche practice that there aren't a lot of other attorneys that do that. So, let's say you have a patent, or you want to procure a patent and you seek out a patent attorney. That patent attorney is highly specialized. Those attorneys oftentimes not only have a JD, which is a Juris Doctorate, which is the degree, which is a law degree basically. Oftentimes they have science degrees, so they might have a bachelor's in science, or some special type of PhD. So those attorneys are going to charge more. Those attorneys might be more like $350 or $375 or even upwards of $400 an hour. So it depends. So once you are choosing an attorney, you need to understand how much they're charging, how they are getting paid, and also whether they want a retainer. For some matters, what attorneys will want, and these are the attorneys that are being paid hourly only. Contingency fee attorneys cannot ask for retainers, but some attorneys will want a retainer. And basically what that means is you give them a certain amount of money up front, maybe $3,000, $4,000. Oftentimes, immigration attorneys will want this. They will ask for that $3,000, $4,000 up front, and then they will, as they are working on your file, they will be deducting their attorney's fees and any costs from that retainer. And then when that amount of money, that retainer, has been spent down, then they will ask you for additional money if the matter has not been resolved yet. Now, regardless of whether the attorney has asked for a retainer or not, if the attorney is charging hourly, you need to make sure that you are getting monthly billing statements where that attorney will detail for you in 6-minute increments, oftentimes, what they have done for your case, and how they have, why you're being charged what you're being charged, or why they have spent the retainer in the way that they have. There's no way that you should just get a bill at the end of the month, or get a bill when the end of your retainer, when your retainer's been spent down, without any explanation of where that money has gone, or how the bill has been incurred. So first thing, make sure you understand the money. Second thing, and this is optional, not all attorneys need to have this, but in my opinion, they should, and that is malpractice insurance. If they don't have malpractice insurance and something goes sideways on your claim, you and the attorney both might be SOL. So it really is best practice to have malpractice insurance. I definitely have malpractice insurance, but there are other attorneys who do not have malpractice insurance. So that's a consideration. The third consideration is whether that attorney has any ethical violations. And the ethical violations and the malpractice insurance, you can figure out if the person, has any of these things if at least if you're in Washington State, at the Washington State Bar Association's website. And that is WSBA.org. And we'll have the link to that in the show notes. And on the website, it will indicate whether that attorney has malpractice insurance, whether they have had any ethical violations, and what for. And those ethical violations, that I feel like we can have a whole episode just on the ethical violations. So I'm not going to go too deeply into that right now. But I will say that some of the major ethical violations to look out for are trust fund violations. That means that this attorney has had their hands in their client's money, which, in my opinion, I'll leave it up to you guys out there how you feel about it. But in my opinion, that's a major red flag. I would have a hard time trusting someone with my money, my privileged information, if I knew that that's how they had dealt with people previously. That's a major one to watch out for. Some of the other common ethical violations, include things like, entering into settlements without authority from their clients, which is, another major flag. I think that speaks to a breakdown in communication, which is worrisome because good communication with an attorney is important. And then, of course, you have some of your wild card ethical violations like, inappropriate conduct with a client, like sleeping with a client or something like that. But, listen, I'll leave that up to you guys how you feel about that. But if you see that this prospective attorney has had their hands in their client's trust fund account, that, definitely be wary and proceed, at your own risk at that point. The third consideration is, and this is actually really in no particular order. You might decide to rank this in a different order than I've laid it out here. But the fourth consideration is, what is the attorney's experience and their practice area? And like I said, you can't be a certified workers' comp specialist. That doesn't exist in this state. But you can be someone who has 20 years of workers' comp experience. So, at that point, if you have a workers' comp issue, then you could be pretty well assured that that person knows the ins and outs of the system, knows the players involved in the system, and, stands a good shot of safely navigating you through whatever issue you're having. So if you have a workers' compensation injury, come see me. Don't go see the person who has 20 years of criminal law experience. Yes, that person is probably a very accomplished attorney, but they are not necessarily going to know the ins and outs of this other system just because they know the ins and outs of the criminal law system. So making sure that the attorney's expertise matches with your need is also critical. The next consideration, I would say, would be personality fit. Attorneys, we're not all robots, right? We have different personalities and different views on things. I always tell my prospective clients right away in the first meeting that I am from New York. I tend to be no nonsense, and I'm never going to blow sunshine up their butt. I'm always going to tell them the truth, whether they want to hear it or not. And some people, they really like that. Some people don't. And the people who don't like that don't work with me and it's fine. I don't feel badly about it at all. But, I would much rather have that client that understands what my approach is and appreciates that approach. It's going to make working with that client easier for me, and it's also going to make it easier for the client because there's going to be less friction. And of course, the less friction there is because of an ill-fitting personality situation, then the more focus that the attorney has to deal with the actual legal matter. So I would say that the personality fit does matter. The other thing, some people might want to consider is cultural sensitivity or comfort. If this is a situation where you are an employee, if you are a woman identified employee and you are having an issue in the workplace with a man identified employer, maybe you want an attorney who you feel like might be more understanding of your position. Maybe you want to find another woman attorney, and that's okay. Or maybe you are someone who has faced discrimination in the workplace, and maybe you want to find an attorney who is from that same cultural background because, that would make you feel more comfortable. That's also perfectly okay. And in many states, including Washington State, we have minority bar associations here that make finding those types of attorneys very easy. And there's a minority bar association for almost anyone. There is the Washington Women Lawyers Association. There's Q-Law, which is the Queer Lawyers Association. There's Lauren Miller. I'm a member of Lauren Miller, actually a former president of Lauren Miller, and that's the Black Bar Association. There's the Latino Bar Association. There's the Asian Bar Association, the Jewish Bar Association. I can go on. I'm sure. There's MELA, the Middle Eastern Lawyers Association. I'm sure I'm forgetting some folks, and if I am, I apologize. But all this to say, Washington State has a robust minority bar association community. And if you are someone who feels like they want an attorney that reflects their background to represent them, you have a lot of choices to do that. And each of the minority bar associations maintains their own websites. And I will have a link to those major minority bar associations here in the show notes if any of you folks want to follow up with them directly. The other consideration I would put out there is a lawyer the best professional for you, or is there someone else that could help you? If you're having a tax issue, do you need an attorney, or would an accountant do? I'd say for most issues, you would want an attorney rather than another professional. But there are those instances. And then, of course, we can't talk about how to find an attorney without talking about the 500-pound elephant in the room. Actually, I don't actually know how much elephants weigh. I'll have to fact check that later. But my point is, there's something big that we need to talk about, and that is these online legal services. Now, obviously, access to justice is a big deal. As I mentioned at the outset, those numbers, they're bleak, right? And these online legal services purport to make, the legal system more affordable for more of us. And for some instances, that's true. However, these online systems, they have their limitations. If you have really no assets to speak of and you're in good health, yeah, sure, go ahead and hop on one of those on LegalZoom or whatever and have them draft you up a will. However, if you have kids, if you have a business, if you have, anything that is outside of just the very narrow window, you're going to need some help with that. And then what if something goes sideways? Is the form going to help you? No, it's not, but an attorney will. And an attorney will be there to not only help you draft the document, but then to help you deal with the document if somehow it's challenged in some later legal proceeding. As far as I know, LegalZoom or any of those other comparable programs aren't gonna go to court with you if something goes wrong with the form that you've paid $100 for. So yes, oftentimes getting an attorney is more money, but depending on what is at stake, it's the better thing to do, and it may cost you less in the long run. However, like I said, if it's just a very straightforward situation, if you're a legal immigrant and you're just applying to renew or replace a green card, do you need to go to an attorney for that? Probably not. You're probably good just filling out the form, paying the $495 fee, and moving on with your life. However, if you are applying for your green card for the first time, maybe you didn't enter the country legally, maybe you have some kids or some other people you want to file for, then I would say get an attorney rather than trying to navigate that system on your own, with just filling out the form online. That you might need more help than that. So once you have gone through, these various considerations, done your cost-benefit analysis, how do you then find an attorney? Well, a couple ways. I mentioned the WSBA.org website. There's that website. There are also the various Minority Bar Association websites I mentioned earlier. Then there, Google search also could help you. But I'll tell you, most people find their attorneys through word of mouth and from referrals from other people, right? Because that's how you know. Okay, you've worked with this person before. How was it? Did they treat you well? How'd they handle your legal matter? You have a chance to ask all these questions. Most people come to my office through referrals, and speaking to other attorneys in the area, that's pretty typical. Another common way is just through a Google search. But again, Google is it's helpful, but it's only going to tell you so much. But it is a good resource. And once you have found an attorney, either through referral, through a website, through whatever means, through one of these other, like Avvo is another one. There are a few just like websites where you can find various attorney listings, And I'll have some links to those other websites also in the show notes if folks want those as resources. But once you've identified an attorney, then the next thing is having that initial appointment with that attorney. And many attorneys will offer an initial appointment free of charge. And that's great. And even if you don't end up going with that attorney, during that free initial appointment, they might be able to give you some guidance. I know for me, I do offer free initial appointments, and sometimes I meet with prospective clients and either I determine it's not a good fit or they determine it's not a good fit, but we're able to use that initial appointment for me to at least give them some guidance, because sometimes I'm able to walk them through how to manage the situation without me or without another attorney. So there, you've just gotten an hour, or 50 minutes of free advice. I mean, it's a good deal. And from the attorney's perspective, that's also marketing for them, because even if you don't end up going with them, you're going to go and then tell other people, hey, you have this issue. I didn't end up going with this attorney because, whatever, but they gave me really good advice, and then I was able to deal with the situation myself after that. And that's great marketing. And then, that person is a potential referral source to bring in other clients. So you want to find out if they offer a free consultation. A lot of attorneys do. And then at that initial appointment, again, make sure you understand the fee and the fee structure. And also make sure that not only is the fee well defined, but that the scope of work is well defined. What is the legal matter or matters that this attorney is being engaged to help you with? And at the end of that, there should be, if you decide to work with that particular attorney, you should get everything in writing. The fee as well as the scope of work. And you should sign off on that. The attorney should sign off on it, and it should be in writing. Another thing to consider as you are, having that initial appointment with the attorney, or even setting up the initial appointment with the attorney, is how is it interacting with the office support staff? Is the office support staff courteous? Are they prompt in getting back to you? All of these things you need to consider, because oftentimes you're not just going to be dealing with the attorney, you'll be dealing with the attorney's paralegal or the attorney's receptionist or the attorney's office manager. So as you are interacting with these different people in the attorney's office, you need to be asking yourself, how is this going? Is this feeling good? Are they being nice? Does it feel like a nice vibe? Because you might be dealing with them as much, if not more than, the attorney. And at the end of the day, it comes down to your gut feeling. Do you feel like, it's going to be good working with this person? Go with your sixth sense. In my experience, my gut has never led me astray. So, to wrap that all up, attorneys are expensive. Not everyone can afford us. Certainly not everyone who needs us can afford us. And there are various resources that could make, having an attorney more affordable. And that's not just the LegalZoom websites. I'm talking about legal clinics. Most, major cities will have more than one legal clinic. I know here in in Washington, and certainly in the major metropolitan areas in Washington, Seattle, Tacoma, Spokane, they have various legal clinics. And there'll be neighborhood legal clinics, or sometimes various minority bar associations will also put on legal clinics. And there'll be opportunities for people to come in with their legal issues, and they're staffed by attorneys, and they just come in, they sit with the attorney, they go over the issue, and the attorney will either help them right there on the spot or refer them to someone else who can help them, or have them, have the client or the person in need come back and see them at their office, if it's a bigger issue that, can't be resolved right there at the clinic. But it's a great resource, and these clinics are oftentimes free or very low cost. The Bar Association here in Washington does encourage attorneys to have a certain amount of pro bono hours, and pro bono means we're working for free. We're working for free hours. So there are opportunities either through clinics or even through law firms to get your matters dealt with pro bono. It takes a little bit of doing, but it is possible. So the best resources in Washington State and also in most other states would be the State Bar Association, minority bar associations, and any sort of local legal clinics. And we can, in later episodes, we'll talk more about how the State Bar Association works. It's actually really fascinating, and that could be a whole 2 or 3 episodes, so I won't go into that. But I will say, for our purposes here today, the State Bar Association is going to be the best resource if you want to find out if your prospective attorney is properly licensed, if they have any ethical violations, and if they have malpractice insurance. Every year, we're required to share that information with the Bar Association, and then they post it on their website. And the Bar Association is also the body that is in charge of those ethical violations. So if an attorney has received an ethical violation, the State Bar Association is the one that has given that violation out, essentially. So there you have it. Hopefully you out there listening are not ever in a position where you need an attorney. But if you are, I hope that I've given you some guidance in terms of how to navigate that situation. And certainly stay tuned for later episodes where we will go into some of these topic sentences in more depth. But for right now, I'm going to leave you with the plug, and that is, if you're here in Washington State and have a workers' compensation or Social Security issue, please reach out to us here at Atlas Law and let us take the weight off of your shoulders. All right, this wouldn't be a legal podcast without a legal disclaimer, y'all. So remember, seek legal counsel for your specific situation and in your specific jurisdiction. Thank you all for listening. And remember, if you don't get the system is going to get you. See y'all next time.